I have never read a book quite like the one that I'm going to be discussing today, which is Chlorine by Jade Song. Hello, welcome. My name is Leah, and this is my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that are all types of uncomfortable, whether they're weird, bizarre, gross, disturbing, and today's book is certainly strange. The story I'm going to be telling today talks about the transformation of a teenage girl from a normal teenager into a mermaid. And this story is not one of magical realism. This is very firmly rooted in reality, though our main character may not be. And she believes that mermaids are made and not born. So this book discusses the dramatic actions that she takes in order to complete her transformation into a mermaid. If I were to give you two words to describe this book, they would be mermaid puberty. This will certainly go into a lot of detail about the woes of puberty, and it also focuses a lot on the difficulties of being a young athlete and the limits that they will push themselves to in order to succeed, as well as the cost that that can have on their mental health. So let's get started. So our story is told from the perspective of the main character, Ren Yu, who is a teenage girl who is Chinese American and a very successful swimmer. She has revolved her entire life around swimming. From a very young age, I believe when she was 7, she started swimming, and she had no idea what she was doing at the time. She had never been in water before, but she tried out for the swim team nonetheless. That is where her swimming career began, as well as the relationship that she formed with her coach, Coach Jim, who is gnarly. We hate Coach Jim. He is the worst. He fulfills the role of the creepy, pervy, no boundaries coach, which is really bothersome regardless, but that much more so when you realize that he started as her coach when she was only 7 years old. So Ren says of her coach, Jim, who had already noticed me during tryout week, paid me close attention as the weeks went on. He noticed my beauty at the same time he noticed my swimming talent, because Jim had two great skills, swim coaching and predicting who would be hot. The two skills went hand in hand. The pretty ones were always fast. Jim would compliment me, guide my arms and legs into proper forms. He loved to touch me. Never where it would count as illegal, as abuse. None of his touches would compel you to stop reading in disgust. None would make you want to stop understanding my story. Everything was coach appropriate. I didn't mind. I was a beautiful human girl. So beautiful I could understand why he wanted to touch me. Jim is sure to say things like, make sure your clothes aren't too slutty, or make sure not to tease anyone too much with your good looks. And beyond that, Jim is not just a pervert, but he is actually quite an asshole as well. He's known for throwing things at the swimmers. He has very monumental tantrums, and he does things that are pretty much physically torturous to the students to punish them. Like, again, maybe not illegal. He makes them do extremely painful things for very long amounts of time, and ultimately he just loves the control that he gets over them. This relationship she has with Coach Jim is one that she's gonna have for the long haul, because he becomes her coach at 7 and stays her coach throughout her teenage years. So I do want to mention that Ren is the one telling the story, but she is reflecting upon past events. So she is telling us these stories. She's in present day, but everything that happened is, years in the past. So as Ren is talking to us in present day, she is very much wanting to explain to us her transformation from being this normal human girl to how she became a mermaid. And the way everything is told gives you the sense that there's some sort of monumental event that happens as a part of this transformation. And we do get a lot of hints as to what it is, so that when that moment finally comes, it's not a huge shock. It's just that we're more getting the details of it. But the sense is that it's something that other people are not viewing in a positive light. So throughout the book, we get some chapters that are written as letters, and they're written to Ren. Ren by her best friend Kathy. Now, Kathy is also on the swim team, and that's how they became friends originally, is through swimming. And Ren did have a hard time making friends. It seems like a lot of the students are kind of racist. You know, she's Chinese American, and it just seems like, you know, they make comments on her name and kind of the things she likes. And so it's not like the warmest, fuzziest place for her to make friends, but her and Kathy, the origin of their friendship is actually quite the story, because they became friends when Ren first got her period and had to go to a swim competition, but had not quite figured out the whole tampon situation yet. The night before, she spent like 8 hours trying to get a tampon in, and she had successfully done so. But to recreate the action again the next day at the competition without her mom there, she is struggling. She's getting blood everywhere, and the tampon is not, not doing what it needs to do. So she hears someone in the bathroom. She sees it's Kathy, and Kathy is the only girl on her team who seems like perhaps she could be amenable to being friends. She grabs Kathy, brings her into the stall with her as she's like fully naked and bloody, and is like, I need you to help me. And she gets Kathy to shove the tampon up in her, and it's like this bloody, crazy scene. And we are definitely told that Kathy and Ren, throughout their friendship, they have feelings for each other. It seems that Kathy's feelings for Ren are stronger than Ren's feelings for Kathy. And through these letters that we are reading from Kathy, we can understand that she is writing these letters to Ren, present day. And she is acknowledging that she knows Ren is a mermaid, and, back when you were a human girl, yada, yada, blah, blah. But in these letters, she is really detailing the full extent of her lust. And nothing ever happened between them growing up. I think Ren was kind of just nervous and unsure about it. And Kathy, I think, was the same. But Kathy be pining like crazy, way more than I think Ren was. And the extent to which she's obsessed with Ren it's really intense. And these letters, I feel like a lot of people will never have anyone feel about them the way that Kathy feels about Ren. It is a lot. But in these letters, she is saying that she's putting them in bottles and leaving them at this body of water in hopes that Ren will find them. And she's acknowledging, that Ren has left to go live her life as a mermaid. So we're to be left with this idea that, I guess, I don't know, Ren just lives in the water now as a mermaid. And so we still, again, don't know how everything unfolded with the transformation and what exactly happened. But we're given a lot of, information about where things stand now. And it's that Ren and Kathy are not currently in communication. And Kathy just keeps leaving these letters that she's not sure if Ren is reading or not. Now, I want to back up a little bit just to give you some more information on Ren's life while she is a human girl. And she definitely has some challenges going on. So her mom and dad, they were all living, the three of them, together. And the dad left to move back to China because he really didn't like being in the US. He didn't want to learn English. And so without that, it's really hard for him to get a job. So he decides to move back to China, make money there, and send it home. So her parents are still, quote unquote, together, but they don't live together and they hardly ever see him. And so for Ren, this definitely feels like her and her mom have been abandoned, regardless of whether or not they got divorced. He's really no longer much of a figure in their lives, which I think is really hard for her. I think the fact that Ren also feels ostracized by her community is hard for her. It doesn't seem like there's anyone else who is Chinese that she knows, or at least that she mentions in the book. And the students are not very kind to her about it. Like even Kathy, Ren wants to play this one Chinese song when she goes out to swim at one of the competitions. Like you get a song when you walk out. And I guess she wants to play a Chinese song, and Kathy is like, oh my God, everyone's gonna make fun of you. You can't play that. And she's forced to do Don't Stop Believin' by Journey instead. Apparently everyone else selected Don't Stop Believin' as well. So with her dad leaving and the fact that she feels ostracized, microaggressions she feels from her classmates about her race, all of these different things, they do put a stress on her. Her mom is also struggling financially, especially to keep up with the cost of swim team. So, you know, financially they're like washing out plastic bags to reuse them. That's like where they're at, like where, you know, every penny that they can save makes a difference. And Ren is doing really well with her swimming, and maybe it's because she's so pretty and all the pretty ones are fast. Ren's swimming track record is so good that she's on track to like go to an Ivy League college based on how well she's doing and if she continues to keep up her performance. So this puts a great amount of stress on her. And, you know, in high school I did cheerleading for a bit, but like the level of intensity associated with the swim team and what they have to do in order to compete is wild. It doesn't seem like any of them have their own lives. And Jim, meanwhile, is like constantly guilting them about what they should and shouldn't eat, and like, don't have an eating disorder, wink wink, but have an eating disorder is kind of the vibe he's giving. Overall, everything that they're asking their bodies to do seems like way above and beyond what our bodies want to tolerate. She's constantly describing in detail all of the physical impact of swimming on her body, and like, I don't know, the effect of the like chlorine on her skin and her muscles and just everything. It feels like this is not something that your body wants, and they just push themselves so beyond what they should, and that's normalized for them. So yeah, being a high school athlete, this definitely didn't necessarily make me feel like I was missing out. This sounds pretty rough. And one thing that alters the course of Ren's trajectory is at one point her sophomore year, she says that she like broke her head, and at one point her and Kathy are walking and she slips in the driveway and hits her head, and she gets a concussion, and it's a pretty severe one, and the doctors keep warning her of all the things that she needs to not do until she's no longer having headaches and, you know, light sensitivity and all these different things. And in the meantime, they're not wanting her to swim, and she goes a little stir crazy. And she's also getting pressure from Jim, like he's, you know, doing the thing of like, oh no, definitely don't come back if you still have any headaches or symptoms or anything like that, except please do that. Like, he's one of those people that's saying one thing while completely meaning the other and like giving you a little wink. And so Ren does decide to go back to swimming, even though she knows she is still having symptoms from her concussion, and she will feel excruciating pain during practices if her head gets jostled around a little bit. And, you know, the long-lasting impact that can have on you, and just like from a neurological standpoint and her mental health standpoint, I definitely feel that this concussion does play a role in how things turn out. I feel like her brain got jostled a little bit too hard, and the fact that she jumped back in so soon, I think, really changed things. As time continues, Ren experiences additional stresses in her teenage life. There's one incident that seems to have a pretty big impact on her, where they are at one of their swim parties with their fellow teammates, and they're playing Truth or Dare, and Ren gets dared to go and play 7 Minutes in Heaven with one of the boys. And Kathy tries to be like, no, she doesn't have to do that, whatever. And, you know, Kathy's trying to stand up for her, but Ren ultimately is like, okay, no, it's fine, I'll do it. And they go into this shed or whatever, and they do hook up. And Ren's recollection of it, the way she talks about it, is she's like, knowing that the reader wants there to be some crazy pivotal event, like where she said no and he kept going, or something, you know, kind of traumatizing about it. And it seems like this event really did stick with her, and it's not that she wanted to do it, but there was nothing that would have expressed to him that she didn't want to, because she's like, no, fine, it's fine, guys, I'll go. And so she like, lets everything happen while not actually wanting it to happen. And so I think for her, that's pretty traumatizing. And she holds this against Kathy as well, which I feel is kind of unfair, because Kathy tried to get her out of it and she's like, no, it's fine. So anyways, this experience seems to impact her. She had actually been dating one of the other boys on the swim team, and they had been having sex. And so after this event, they break up. And at one point, she had even actually thought she was pregnant with the other boy's baby, and she has to go to the store and take 5 zillion pregnancy tests, and luckily she was not. But, she's having these different stressors in her life, and it just seems like everything is sort of culminating into the stress that will lead her to do what she's going to do next. And oh my gosh, okay, so she is making it clear that she's going to do something to debut as a mermaid. And we get enough hints that we kind of know what she's going to do, but it's still really shocking and jarring to fully process that this is what she does. But basically, she's going to be going to one of the most important swim competitions, and there is going to be a recruiter there for one of the big Ivy Leagues, so this is really her time to prove herself. And so she even tells Kathy, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have something to show everybody at this meet. And, Kathy doesn't react as if it's anything crazy, because why would she expect that it's gonna be anything crazy? She doesn't really know. So there's one swim competition where Ren was actually disqualified, and this one had really been triggering to her. She thought she did a great job, and then they say, oh, your feet slipped apart for a second, which was important during this certain stroke that they didn't do that. So that really, set her off and seemed to push her more into this whole mermaid idea, because mermaids' feet don't come apart. And anyway, so that was yet another thing that sort of pushed her into this direction of like, okay, gonna debut as a mermaid. And there are certain things she does that are kind of just like sort of strange and weird that, we aren't thinking that they're going to culminate in what ends up actually happening. But for example, at one point, Kathy snuck into Ren's room and bathroom, and she sees in the bathroom, Ren had been taking out a bunch of like her hair. Like, I don't know if it was falling out from stress or what, but she'd been getting a bunch of her hair. Oh, I remember what it is. She actually used to eat her hair. She was eating her hair for a while, which, so yeah, she's obviously not doing great, but she had put all this hair on her shower wall and like had it in the shape of like a mermaid tail, which is just kind of like kind of gross and weird. But anyway, so that's getting a little sidetracked. I want to talk about this intense mermaid debut, which okay, so she had told her mom that she was interested in learning how to sew, because her mom is always sewing. And so her mom's thinking this is a great bonding activity between them. And so she is practicing to sew a lot by herself. And she has also been taking a lot of like ibuprofen and just like pain medication and things like that, because of the head injury that she had, as well as just, all the physical issues that come along with being such an intense athlete. And so she is practicing desensitizing herself to pain while simultaneously learning to sew, while simultaneously being obsessed with mermaids. And for the record, she's not obsessed with like the like Ariel type mermaids. She has this book of stories that is about these mermaids that kind of be doing crazy things, violent things, and she's obsessed with that book. At one point, she eats the pages of the book. So I just want to point out, it's not like there were no red flags in terms of how her mental health was going. But to continue, so Ren is preparing to make herself a mermaid tail, but she's not making a mermaid's tail out of clothing. She is planning to turn her legs into a mermaid tail by sewing them together. Oh. So the day of the big competition, Ren gets to the gym early, and in one of the shower stalls, she cuts her legs, like gets a flap of skin hanging from both legs and then puts the flaps together and sews all the way down to her ankles so that her legs are totally fused together. And she took so much pain medication, and she is so excited to get into the water with her tail. And at this point, she is delusional to the point where it doesn't occur to her that people would think this is horrible or disturbing or disgusting. She thinks that everyone is going to be so in awe of her majesty. And as she starts walking out, there are a couple people who see her and flip the fuck out. Like, Jim is screaming at the judges to stop the competition. They do not want to let her in the water. And Jim and Kathy basically grab her and are holding her down while they're on the bleachers. And she is thrashing, trying to get out because she wants to go in the water so bad. And as she's thrashing, some of the stitches are getting ripped and there's blood everywhere. And what's so interesting is she doesn't even seem to be in a lot of pain. I know she's on a lot of pain medications, but I would think regardless, this sounds excruciating. And anyways, so they end up taking her to the hospital in an ambulance. And to highlight the financial struggles that her and her mom are going through, when Jim calls her mom, she's like, well, how much is the ambulance? Is it the kind that's going to be covered through our insurance? That's where her mind is going to, above and beyond anything else, even though her daughter's legs are sewn together. And I can't imagine how you would even describe that to her mom. And her mom is one of the only parents that doesn't come to these competitions. Otherwise, she would have seen it for herself. Once they're at the hospital, after Ren wakes up, because they had her sedated for a while, her mom, she's trying so hard to not make things worse, but she, this is such a hard pill to swallow. What are you even going to say? And she's, telling her mom that she's a mermaid. At one point, the doctor comes in and he's a dick, and they just start planning for the procedure in which they are going to, separate her legs. And she absolutely does not want that. And one thing that I think is kind of sweet of her mom is her mom said, yeah, they wanted to do it right away while you were under. But I thought if it was so important to you to do this to your body, I figured you would want to be a part of the conversation before we take this away, which is pretty considerate in this weird situation. So Ren's dad even flies home from China and he's saying, you need to get your legs separated, whatever. And she is resisting so hard and no, because honestly, if you went through all that to make that happen, that just sounds like a one-time project. You don't want to have to do that again. So she's resisting very much so, but she's not in a position where she can escape the hospital. I mean, her legs are still sewn together. She'd be hobbling quite a bit trying to get out of there. So at one point, Kathy visits her, and Kathy is also very sweet in that she is totally trying to acknowledge that Ren is a mermaid. Yeah, totally. And I don't know if she believes that or is just so in love with Ren that whatever Ren says goes, or she's trying to be sensitive to the situation. But she does express a lot of remorse in her letters that she didn't see how much Ren was struggling as a human before this happened. So Ren tries to guilt trip Kathy into helping her escape so that she doesn't have to have the surgery. And she really is trying to guilt trip her about the fact that Kathy was helping Coach Jim hold her back so that she couldn't get in the water. She brings up, that she was upset about that one time that she had to go in the shed and make out with the dude, and Kathy should have tried harder to stop it, and all these different things. And Kathy says that she will do whatever is needed to help Ren, and Ren doesn't really believe that Kathy's gonna do anything, but she really has no other option than to hope. And what do you know? Right before the surgery is scheduled to happen, Kathy comes back. She's at Ren's window. I think Ren is on the second or third floor. I think she must be on the second floor. I don't think she's on the third floor. But basically, while she still has her tail intact, she has to jump down, and Kathy's gonna catch her. And oof, this seems little precarious, but it works. Kathy catches her, and she even will be okay, yeah, when she's hopping out the window, she's put your tail to the side. And when Ren hears Kathy call it a tail, she feels so seen and so validated. And Kathy drives her to the water, which is where Ren says she wants to go. And they kind of have this final little powwow. And the whole time Ren is just kind of wanting to leave and go in the water and ditch Kathy. But Kathy ends up deciding to get in the water too. She gets naked. They're in the water together. But ultimately Ren knows she can't stay here with Kathy. So Ren goes off and lives her mermaid life. And I think I was really, really hoping that this book was going to tell me what her mermaid life entails, but we never hear anything about her responding to Kathy's letters. We know she goes off in the water and is so happy when she goes to do so with her tail. So I guess the tail's working okay, but we don't know any of the logistics or the practicalities of this. I was so confused about what she was anticipating in terms of her mermaid life, because she's thinking she's gonna go and swim and find other mermaids, and I'm like, okay, so what are you gonna eat? Is she just gonna like spear fish and like eat raw fish? Because I don't imagine that she's going on land to go and try to like cook anything. Are you gonna just eat seaweed? I don't know. Like once it's cold weather, what are you gonna do? Like it just doesn't seem like something that was at all planned out. And so the fact that it seems like she's been gone long enough for Kathy to have written multiple letters, I'm like, did she figure something out? Or could she have like already like drowned by now? I don't know. And then I just feel like her tail, there's no way that's not going to get infected, right? So maybe she drowned and died and we don't know. And so that was one thing where I'm like, oh, the curiosity is going to get me. So I really did like this story, but I wouldn't say, oh my gosh, this was such an amazing book that I'm so obsessed with. But I definitely think it's worth giving a read. I definitely think, it covering puberty and the perils of being an intense high school athlete and the pressures that young people put on themselves to succeed, and feeling like you need to hide your mental health struggles, and what can happen if people don't pay attention to some of the warning signs, I think is important too. One thing that I think this book really makes you think about is, do we need other people to live in accordance with what we think is best and our interpretation of reality? Because all the outsiders in this book are viewing her transformation with her mutilation to create her tail as something really, really horrible, and obviously that she's, in very poor mental health, and that's the way I'm taking it as well. But the thing is, having this tail makes her really happy, and it seems like she would be truly distraught, depressed, just miserable if her tail is taken away. And so she would be unhappy in order to make everyone else happy. And so just because other people are deeming it as bad, why should she have to live in accordance with what other people deem as right and good if it's not going to make her happy? It makes you think a lot about that, because I think Kathy really shows like, okay, I will prioritize your happiness even if maybe I don't think it's necessarily the best for you from like an outsider's perspective. If you think it's what's best for you, then that's that. And, how much do you push back? How much do you push back? Because, okay, what if it makes her happy and then her tail gets infected and she dies? Like, do you let her be happy to the point of death? I don't know. So I think that's a really important question that comes out of this book. And I also think it makes you think a lot about like reality, and your reality is really what you make it, because she knows that other people are not going to view her as a mermaid, but she knows what she knows now, and that mermaids are made and not born, and she's able to create this reality that she finds comforting and that gives her, the fulfillment that she's been looking for. So it makes you think a lot about like how you interpret things. And I know it's probably not the author's intent to like have us be like, okay, like let's take this lesson and this tail mutilation and turn it into like life is what we make it. Like I don't know that that's really what we're supposed to be getting from it, but it does make you think about it. So Chlorine, Jade Song, go check it out. Tell me what you think. I will say that really the main disturbing part is the tail part. Other disturbing things are just like, the trials of like puberty, but nothing we haven't all experienced firsthand. It's really just the tail that's going to disturb you in this one, I think. So go ahead and enjoy.